Hello and welcome to the Commander's Quarters. I'm your host Mitch, glad to have you here. Here at the Commander's Quarters, we're all about Commander on a budget. Today we have an episode of Commander's 2 Cents. On episodes like these, I give you my own personal take on topics about the format in general and current news. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. And while you're at it, subscribe and review our podcast as well. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. Also, make sure you check out the Porcine Stand, our limited edition playmat on Kickstarter that's only available for the 30-day campaign. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all of their support. Today, let's talk about the best alternative win cards in Commander. In a typical Commander game, you've got a few ways to win. If you can drop your opponent's life totals down to 0, you win. Or you can kill your opponents with 21 Commander damage. You can even kill your opponents with 10 poison counters through Infect. Or you can mill your opponents out so they have no more cards to draw. But there are some unique cards that give you other ways to win. These cards are going to give you a unique condition that you have to meet to win. Some of these can be very powerful and others can just be very unique and fun to achieve. Some of these are somewhat similar, so I'm going to group them together as well as I can. So let's start things off with our first category, You Can Count on It. Here we've got some alternative win conditions with Darksteel Reactor, Simic Ascendancy, and Helix Pinnacle. Each of these win you the game once they have a certain number of counters on them. Darksteel Reactor is an artifact that costs 4 and it's indestructible. It says at the beginning of your upkeep you may put a charge counter on Darksteel Reactor. And then when Darksteel Reactor has 20 or more charge counters on it, you win the game. So because Darksteel Reactor is indestructible, it is hard to deal with. It will get you 1 charge counter each turn, but there are plenty of ways to get more. And once you get the 20 charge counter on it, it wins you the game right away. And then Simic Ascendancy is an enchantment for green-blue. By paying 1 green-blue, you can put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. And then whenever 1 or more +1/+1 counters are put on a creature you control, put that many growth counters on Simic Ascendancy. At the beginning of your upkeep, if Simic Ascendancy has 20 or more growth counters on it, you win the game. +1/+1 counters can be put on creatures very quickly. But keep in mind that unlike Darksteel Reactor, you have to wait until your upkeep to win. And Simic Ascendancy doesn't protect itself, but Helix Pinnacle does. It's an enchantment for a green and it has Shroud. By paying X, you put X tower counters on Helix Pinnacle. And at the beginning of your upkeep, if there are 100 or more tower counters on Helix Pinnacle, you win the game. So the more mana you can pump into Helix Pinnacle, the quicker you can win. With infinite mana, as long as this can stick around, you can easily win. But let's go over some commanders now that might be able to use these. Roll the Hulkblade can be a great place for Darksteel Reactor. Being able to double its counters can really speed up the clock. Simic Ascendancy can get 20 counters in no time with Pure and Toothy. And Kruvix God of Horizons can be a fantastic place for Helix Pinnacle. In that deck, you're going to be ramping a ton and utilizing that mana with Helix Pinnacle. But now let's move on to an entirely different card in our next category, Victory Approaches. And in this category, we're going to talk about Approach of the Second Sun. It's a sorcery for 6 and a white, and it says, if Approach of the Second Sun was cast from your hand and you've cast another spell named Approach from the Second Sun this game, you win the game. Otherwise, put Approach of the Second Sun into its owner's library 7th from the top and you gain 7 life. So basically, if you can cast this spell twice, you win. Now when you cast this the first time, it's going to gain you 7 life, but it will go back into your library 7th from the top. That means in most circumstances, you're not going to be able to get it back right away. But in a control style strategy where you can protect yourself, this can be a good win condition. Some decks it might fit into are Zedru, Pramicon, and Kaneo Sentiro. Zedru can easily draw you back into it at your next upkeep. And then Pramicon and Kaneo Sentiro can pellow for it long enough to get you it back. Just know that once you've cast it the first time, you're going to have a target on your head. It can be a very effective way to win though for the right deck. And now let's move on to our next category, Living Your Best Life. In this category, we've got 2 similar alternative win cards with Feldar Sovereign and Test of Endurance. Both deal with winning once we have a certain amount of life. Feldar Sovereign is a 4/6 cat beast with Vigilance and Lifelink and it costs 4 white. It says at the beginning of your upkeep, if you have 40 or more life, you win the game. So first off in Commander, we already start at 40, so as long as we can stay at that or above, we're gonna win. But we do have to wait for upkeep though, and creatures are the easiest things for our opponents to remove. Test of Endurance is similar, but it's an enchantment that costs 2 white. It says at the beginning of your upkeep, if you have 50 or more life, you win the game. So this does have a slightly higher bar at 50 life, but again in Commander, 50 life is not hard to get to. On top of that, it's an enchantment, so it's a lot harder to remove in comparison to Feldar Sovereign. Each of these alternative win cards can obviously fit in any kind of a life gain strategy. Oloro can be a good fit for it because it just gains you life just for being in your command zone. And then Firesong and Sunspeaker can be another good place for it too. That deck can gain an absurd amount of life just from 1 damage-based board wipe. And then Kimball is very good at draining your opponents and keeping you ahead on life. Our next category is going to be somewhat similar to these, but in a very different way. So let's look at that category now with That Was Way Too Close. The only card in this category is Near Death Experience. It's an enchantment for 2 white. It says at the beginning of your upkeep, if you have exactly 1 life, you win the game. So in order to win with this card, you really have to live life dangerously. It's a very unique alternative win card. It can be pretty hard to pull off. Getting your life total down that low can obviously be pretty dangerous. Once this is out, your opponents are going to know that something is up. This card though can be pretty effective with a very specific deck. Selenia Dark Angel is a fantastic place for this card. She might not seem like much, but she's got a very unique and powerful effect in the right situation. She has pay 2 life, return Selenia Dark Angel to its owner's hand. Now you can activate this ability in response as many times as you want. So essentially you can pay any even number of life to return it to your hand, which means that if your current life total is an odd number, you can set your life total down to exactly 1. And because you can do this at instant speed, it can be very effective with near-death experience. Now obviously this can be a very high-risk, high-reward play. If any player has any way to deal you 1 damage or make you lose 1 life, you're dead. Or if a player removes near-death experience, you're also in pretty big trouble. Again, this one can be pretty hard to pull off, but it can be a lot of fun when you do it. In comparison, our next category can be pretty easy to pull off. And that category is, because it's opposite day. There are 2 cards in this category with Laboratory Maniac and Jace Wielder of Mysteries. Laboratory Maniac is a 2/2 human wizard that costs 2 and a blue. It says if you would draw a card while your library has no cards in it, you win the game instead. And then Jace Wielder of Mysteries is a planeswalker that has 4 loyalty and costs 1 blue blue blue. It says the exact same thing, that if you would draw a card while your library has no cards in it, you win the game instead. It has +1, target player puts the top 2 cards of their library into their graveyard, draw a card. And then -8, draw 7 cards, then if your library has no cards in it, you win the game. So both of these essentially flip around that rule in Magic where if you would draw a card and you can't, you lose. Now getting through 100 cards might seem like a lot, but it's really not. There are plenty of decks out there that are built around just winning with one of these 2 cards. Jace is probably a little more resilient than Lab Maniac because it's not a creature. Regardless, both can be extremely effective at winning in the right deck. Some decks that can win with these are a Zombie, Gadwick, and the Locust God. A Zombie can draw a ton of cards by untapping and tapping wizards. If you have infinite mana and you cast Gadwick, you can just draw your entire deck. And then with a Locust God deck, you can dig through your deck quickly with Wheels. These alternative win cards are so powerful they can even be seen in some EDH decks. But now let's move on to our next category with a card that's not as powerful but can still be very effective. And that category is called Revel in Your Victory. The only card that's in this category is Revel in Riches. It's an enchantment for 4 and a black, and it says whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, create a colorless treasure artifact token with tap, sacrifice this artifact, add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 10 or more treasures, you win the game. So this card can provide you value on top of being a win condition too. You can choose to spend those treasures to cast more spells, or you can save them up for that win condition. And 10 treasures is absolutely nothing to get to in a game of Commander. Essentially just 1 board wipe can get you those 10 treasures that you need. But keep in mind that this has to stick around until your next upkeep for you to win. Some commanders that can really use this are Teysa Karlov, Masker Girl, and Griswold. Teysa's going to double up its trigger, so anytime a creature an opponent controls dies, you're going to get 2 treasures. That means only 5 creatures need to die for you to win. Then Masker Girl is essentially a board wipe in the command zone, so she can get you those treasures for you. And Griswold's another good place for it because it can give your opponents tokens. This can get you plenty of creatures to kill to get you more treasures. Aside from being an alternative win condition, Revel in Riches is actually just a very effective card. Keep in mind though that you are probably putting a target on your back when you play this. Being able to win off of just 1 board wipe can be pretty dangerous. Let's move on to our next category though, with one that I'm calling Hindsight is 2020. In this category, we've got 2 similar but different cards with Epic Struggle and Mortal Kombat. Epic Struggle is an enchantment that costs 2 green and says at the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 20 or more creatures, you win the game. And then Mortal Kombat is an enchantment that costs 2 black and it says at the beginning of your upkeep, if 20 or more creature cards are in your graveyard, you win the game. So both of these win you the game by having 20 creatures in a certain zone. Epic Struggle counts the battlefield and Mortal Kombat counts the graveyard. Both cards have their positives and negatives. With Epic Struggle, you can really take advantage of tokens to build up a huge board state, but it just takes 1 Wrath to set you all the way back. In contrast, a Wrath can actually help Mortal Kombat. And on top of that, you can mill yourself to help with this as well. But if someone exiles your graveyard, you're set all the way back to 0. There are some decks that can really use each of these though. Race the Redeemed can create a ton of tokens quickly, so Epic Struggle can be pretty easy to meet with this. And then a Name Death aspect can get all of your spirits into your graveyard at once. So as long as your graveyard stays intact, Mortal Kombat can win you the game with this. 20's not too hard of a requirement for these decks to meet. But our next category deals with a different number. So let's move on to our next category, which I'm calling aka the Cuatro. This category includes 2 cards which are Liliana's Contract and Biovisionary. Liliana's Contract is an enchantment that costs 3 black. When it enters the battlefield, you draw 4 cards and lose 4 life. And at the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 4 or more demons with different names, you win the game. And then Biovisionary is a 2/3 human wizard that costs 1 green. It says at the beginning of your end step, if you control 4 or more creatures named Biovisionary, you win the game. So Liliana's Contract wins you the game by playing different demons, and Biovisionary wins you the game by having 4 copies of it. Liliana's Contract can fit right into a deck that's already running a ton of demons like Rakdos the Showstopper. Keep in mind though that it also works with Changeling decks as well. And then Biovisionary can work really well in a clone deck like Riku of 2 Reflections. These aren't the most powerful cards, but they can be pretty unique ways to win. Another unique win condition comes in our next category, which is a means to an end. And the one card in this category is Maze's End. Maze's End is a land that enters the battlefield tapped. You can tap for a color, so you can pay 3 and tap it to return it to its owner's hand and search your library for a gate card, put that onto the battlefield, and shuffle your library. If you control 10 or more gates with different names, you win the game. This is a very specific win condition that requires a lot of setup to make it work. Not only does this enter play tapped, but those gates do as well. So this can be a pretty slow way to win the game, but it can be pretty fun to pull off. Now to play with at least 10 gates, you have to play in a 5-color deck. Some 5-color commanders that can work well with this are Child of Alara and Golos Tyler's Pilgrim. Child of Alara can just continuously blow up the board to keep you safe. And then Golos can help you get gates too whenever it comes into play. Now we've already gone through a lot of alternative win cards, but I've got one final one to tackle. And with this being the last category, let's have a very fun name for it. So the last category is called There Is No Reason This Should Be Banned. I think it's a very fitting name for the category that includes Coalition Victory. Before we get into this card and what it does, keep in mind that this card is banned in Commander. Or maybe I should say it's currently banned in Commander. Many people, including myself, very much disagree with this card being banned. But now let's actually look at the card and see why it's so incredibly powerful and has to be banned. It's a sorcery for 3 in Wooburg. It says you win the game if you control land of each basic land type and a creature of each color. This is an 8-mana sorcery with requirements that are not the easiest things to meet. Yes, there are some ways that can make all of your lands each basic land type, and you can have a creature that's all 5 colors. Still, there are a good amount of things that you actually have to work around to get this thing to work. This is a sorcery that people can easily respond to prevent you from winning the game. They can counter the spell, they can blow up one of your lands, or they can kill one of your creatures to stop this from happening. It is not overpowered in any way and definitely does not deserve to be banned. Again, that's just my opinion, but I know many others share that same opinion. For now though, this card is banned, so make sure you keep that in mind. If you want to play with this card, talk with your playgroup ahead of time, and most of the time, they're probably going to be okay with it. As for commanders this can go in, obviously it can only fit in a 5-color deck. Progenitus might be a good choice because it has protection from everything. That makes it hard to deal with so it can meet that creature requirement. But now it's my turn to hear from you. So in the comments below, let me know what your thoughts on Coalition Victory are. In your opinion, should it stay banned or be unbanned, and why? Also, make sure you check out the Porcine Stand, our limited edition playmat that's only available for the 30-day Kickstarter campaign. Once that campaign ends, it will no longer be available for purchase, so make sure you're backing the campaign before it's too late. And make sure you're following us on social media for more updates and sneak peeks on future episodes. Again, a huge thank you to my patrons who help make this show possible. I truly couldn't do any of this without your support. If you want to support this channel directly, consider becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, including being able to vote on future commanders for deck techs. There are even tiers where you get your own personalized deck tech dedicated to you. You can check out all the Patreon tiers and rewards at patreon.com/commandersquarters. If you haven't already, make sure that you like and subscribe to the channel. Here at the Commander's Quarters, we're all about budget Commander. So while you're at it, go ahead and check out some of our other types of episodes. And with that, I'm out of here. Thanks again and have a good one.